Okay, so this video is about turkey roasters and heat treating in turkey roasters, and I've got a couple other videos on this, but I keep getting lots and lots of questions on this, so I probably didn't go over it well enough in the past. I'm going to be doing a lot of heat treating, and as luck would have it, my turkey roaster, my last one, died. It just died recently. Something wrong with the thermostat. Anyway, I've got a new one. I got this one for free actually, so it's not technically new, and the lid for some reason doesn't fit exactly correct, but that's fine. In my experience, that doesn't matter too much, and I'll explain why in a little bit. A little bit on turkey roasters. I'm not sure exactly how many varieties there are out there, but I've seen turkey roasters that go up to 500 degrees, but most of them are about 400. If I go to the store right now, 90% of the turkey roasters that I see go up to 400, and that's it, where I live. Now you might be able to get one that goes to 500. If you see one that goes to 500, get it if you have the money, or if you can get it for free, it's even better. But 500 will cook a lot more range of material. But if all you can get is 400, get it too, because 400 is fine. You'll cook maybe 80% of the rocks will respond to heat, or respond to 400 degrees. Now, where I live, stones start responding to heat at 300, around 300. And all the way up to 450. Anything higher than 450 for the stones around me is a little unnecessary, except for the extremely grainy stuff. But I don't have much of that, so this one here goes to 450. This works perfect for my needs. Okay, even if I had one that said 400, that still would be perfect. Okay, so like I said, if you can get one to 500, it's good, but 400 will work. Now some of these, actually most of them that I've seen have removable pans, so you can actually take the turkey out without dumping the whole thing, or without grabbing the turkey. You just take the pan out. If you have one of those, remove the pan. It'll give you a lot more room inside. Okay. This one has a built-in pan, so it can't be removed, which is fine. It works. It might have had a pan in here. Maybe that's why this lid doesn't fit. But I prefer to use them without pans. And if it has a built-in pan, that's fine too. Don't worry about it. Don't worry if you can't take the pan out. It still will work. Now, some people use what they call a buffer material in here while heat treating, something like sand or cat litter or dirt even, to try and regulate the heat. But in my experience, it's not necessary. I just stick it in and cook it no matter. I don't even arrange the stones usually. I just put it in there, turn it on, and leave it. And I'll discuss what I do in a minute here. But I mean, sometimes I'll even put just a single stone in and cook that with no buffer material at all. Okay? And sometimes I just throw in all different types, of all different sizes, of all different materials, and cook it all together in one big mass. Or sometimes I'll lay out little flakes at the bottom of different materials. Now, one reason why sometimes I cook just one stone all by itself is because I'm experimenting, or I only need to cook one stone. But usually it's because I'm experimenting, and what I do is I'll write down the heat that I cooked it at and what amount of time on the rock itself. And then, after the process is done, I'll take it out, I'll chip a piece off, and I'll try to work with it and see if it works okay, or if it works better than a raw piece. Now this one here I've marked with a number 2. Probably can't see it. Anyway, I got the corresponding flake here. So I save this. This is going to be a raw. This is raw here. This is raw material. So I save a raw chip to compare later to what it chips like after. Or sometimes I do the opposite. I save the big piece and just cook the little piece. Either way is fine. I have enough experience that I usually just I know that I'm going to get, you know, fairly good results if I cook a big piece like this, because it's not all that big and it won't crack as long as I dry it out, and I'll get into that too. But anyway, when I put a single piece in, I'll write down either on a notebook or on the actual stone the temperature and the time that was heated, and I just chip, you know, after the process is done, I take it out, I chip a piece off and work with it. If it feels like it's better, I'll work with it that way. If I feel like maybe it's still kind of hard to work with, I'll put it back in, heat it again. Again, I'll write on a notebook or on the stone the time and the temperature. Okay, and continue the process. Take it out. When the process is over, chip a piece off and work it. See if it responded. Now, usually I start the experimental process at 350 degrees. If it doesn't respond, I try it again at 400. If it doesn't respond, or if it's not quite where I want it to be, I'll try at 450. But I don't go above the temperature I'm allowed on the roaster, of course. So that kind of limits my experimentation, but it usually will cook 90% of what I have. So everything works out pretty good. All right. So like I said, I just put it all in, or put only one stone in, or whatever I'm using or cooking, and it works fine without a buffer. If you have the time, go ahead and use a buffer material. If you are particular about, or if you're concerned about heat concentration in the corners, you can avoid the corners or put only small material in the corners. And there's other people who have stone heating videos that get into more detail and are more particular than I am. I'm pressed for time usually, so I don't really do much except put it in, dry it out, cook it, and take it out. I don't really worry about the buffer material or where I put the stones or how big the stones are or how I mix it or how many in there. As long as they fit and it works, I don't really care. And it seems to have produced some good results. Alright, so as far as the lids go, most lids are like this. In fact, I've never seen an insulated lid, so we need to insulate. And a lot of people ask me, how do you insulate the lid, or what was that? What do you mean insulate the lid? So, and even if I describe it in an email or something, they still don't understand too well sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and go over that. I just use regular fiberglass insulation. Now this is leftovers from house remodeling. This one here, I hope it's a national brand. Knowing my luck, I can only get it here in my town. But this one says glass wool insulation. Anything that says fiberglass, 100% fiberglass or whatever, will work. It has to be fiberglass. It cannot be cellulose or any other material that contains wood fiber or organic fiber, because it will burn, or it has a chance of burning or creating smoke. So you don't want to use anything but fiberglass. Now if you have something called rock wool or something like that, that's fine too, as long as it has a fire rating that's really good, it'll work. Okay, so I typically use just fiberglass. It's very cheap, and I don't, you know, this is not perfect. I don't try to do this perfectly. I just try to make this flat as I can right here, so when I cover it with aluminum foil, it'll rest down, you know, fairly flat. And it doesn't have to be perfect, like I said. Anyway, okay, so I use super strength or heavy duty aluminum foil, and I think this is a national brand, so you can use this. Super strength, I think, is thicker than heavy duty. Oh, it says right here, previously heavy duty, extra heavy, I mean. Previously extra heavy. So as long as it's heavy, you'll be fine. Okay. Let's see. Well, I'm going to put the shiny side inward because I don't like the glare. Technically, it's probably supposed to be shiny side outward to reflect more heat, but I don't care. And I kind of stretch the aluminum foil a little bit while I'm crimping it, so it'll be flattened. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's how you insulate the lid. Okay, now all right, a little bit on the actual process. When I first put stones in here, I like to dry them out. And my rule of thumb is 200 degrees for 24 hours. Now, if you're adventurous or you know it's not going to crack, you can put it in for 250 or put it in at 250 for 24 hours. But I think 214 is the boiling point, and you start getting steam, and that is what causes the rocks to crack. Okay, if you produce steam inside, and most rocks will have moisture, believe it or not, most rocks will have moisture in the center. So they need to be dried no matter what, even if you've had it outside for I don't know how long, in the sun, and you live in a desert with 34% humidity or whatever, you still need to dry the stone. Now I dry the stone at 200 degrees for 24 hours, and that seems to work very well. Okay, and you can leave it in longer, of course, if you're not sure. Especially if you've removed the stone from a riverbed, I would recommend maybe 48 hours. Okay. Now, after that, after I've had the stones in here for 24 hours at 200 degrees, I turn the heat straight to the temperature that I'm going to cook it at. So let's say that I've got a batch I want to cook at 350. I'll just crank it straight to 350. Now some guys will ramp it up slowly, 50 degrees an hour or whatever it is, and it's fine. You can do that. I just don't see any. When I've done that in the past, I didn't see any difference, so I don't do that anymore. If you notice a big difference, if you notice that you've cooked one batch at a ramped up rate and it worked perfect, and you cooked another batch by just cranking it to the heat you want and it broke all up, then definitely ramp it up. But I've never had a batch break up by turning the heat from 200 to the heat that I wanted to cook it at. Never had a batch explode that way. I have had batches explode when I don't dry them out, but that's the only time they've exploded on me. Okay, so dry it at 200 degrees for 24 hours minimum, and then crank it to the heat you want, You can crank it all the way up to 450 or whatever the maximum setting is if you want. Now, raising the heat really doesn't, the way you raise the heat doesn't matter all that much in my experience, but the way you cool these down is critical. So, there has to be a smooth transition down. In the past I've noticed that if I ramp down the heat, I don't get as good a result as if I just turn it to 0 and let it ramp down steady by itself. Okay, now I know I'm going to get flack for that, but the way I do it is after I cook the stone, and usually it's for 4 hours at the heat that I want. So starting from the beginning, 200 degrees for 24 hours, and then crank it to, let's say in this case 450 degrees, straight to 450, leave it for 4 hours, and then crank it to 0. Now when I turn the heat totally off, I also drape a piece of canvas over the top to slow the escape of heat. Now this is a painter's cloth you can get at the hardware store. I use painter's cloth for just about everything, from the cloths I put down when I knap to the covers on the heat, and to make stuff like pouches or whatever. Painter's cloth is wonderful. Okay. I don't recommend using something that's not cotton. You could melt it. So I would use cotton or something that will not be affected by heat. It won't be affected by heats at 450 or 500 or whatever the maximum is on your roaster. Okay. So that slows down the heat considerably when you cover it, and I leave it to cool for 12 hours minimum. But 12 hours is usually enough so that when I take the lid off and touch the rocks, they feel room temperature. Okay, so from the beginning, 200 degrees for 24 hours. Crank it straight to the heat that you want to cook it at, and leave it for 4 hours. Turn it off completely and leave for 12 hours with the cover on. Okay? And then after the 12 hours, remove the cover. Do not remove the cover before the 12 hours is up. It's very important. It's very important, and it's critical actually, that you make sure that the ramp down from a high heat to 0 is very steady. If there's any jumps in that, you're going to get some weird results in your stone, in my experience. Okay, no matter where it's positioned in the roaster or what type of buffer material, or if there's no buffer material, regardless of what you do, if you ramp down or if there's a non-steady decline, you're going to have some weird things happening with your stone. Okay, so I think that's it. If you guys have any other questions, I'll post them in the comments, and hope that helps.